We're gonna literally, it's happening right now. It's happening.
Let's do it.
Okay, so
Love it.
thank you guys for being here. I was trying to think of when I saw both of you last. Robert was, I believe, Scottsdale.
It was either
Or
Scottsdale
Sedona. Might have been
or
Sedona.
Sedona or Florida too. Didn't I see you in Florida?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we did. Yeah, the Scottsdale was when we arm wrestled.
These are rich people towns.
If you remember that,
we only go to rich people towns.
I think I want. Yeah, Robert and I only frequent higher end. I think we're going to be in Aspen.
It's actually not too far from me. I'll drive over there shortly, and I'll wait for you at the tarmac. I assume you have a private plane.
I read that you moved to Colorado, because last time we saw each other, you were living in Arizona. If I'm not mistaken.
Yep. I'm definitely living that mile high life. So I'm out here in northern Colorado these days.
Nice. And Matt, I think the last time I saw you, we were drinking whiskey with Doug Hayes' father, and I think. I think the whiskey was plant-based, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I wasn't drinking any whiskey. I'll tell you that much. I haven't drinking any whiskey since.
You didn't have a sip of Kentucky whiskey that day?
I may have tasted it, but I wasn't drinking it. I can't. It comes right back up. At my bachelor party, I took a shot of whiskey and instantly threw up 5 seconds later. Because
wow.
I showed up. I was like the fourth one there. They said, "Here's your shot." I did it. Just immediately threw up in the toilet.
I had that moment, but I had that moment with tequila in high school, where for years I couldn't drink tequila because it was just that. It was like, it's not. Are you drinking beet juice? What's happening over there in the Frazier house?
That is a lot of vegetables, including beets.
I think it's his warrior drink. He's a warrior diet drink, if I'm not mistaken.
I call it the blood of the enemy.
The blood. Nice. Good.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, thanks. I'm glad you guys are here. This book is, I'm going to start with a critique of the book, if you guys don't get angry about this, but I found there was not that much information. I felt it was kind of fluffy. I felt like it didn't have substance. And so I wanted to know.
Yeah, kind of rushed it. 2.5, 3 years was kind of we just raced to the finish line with this one.
Yeah, it seems to me that you kind of threw it together. I will say that my new book, 6 Truths, I wrote in an hour and a half. So I feel like there's a like difference of two books. In all seriousness, it's super. I mean, I just got it from your publisher like 2 days ago, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll whip through it. And I was like, holy crap, this has got like a lot of stuff. So this is a resource times 1,000. And I will say that I feel like with all the information out there, and you guys did an excellent job compiling everything, but there is a part of me that goes, okay, so is this going to be the final one? Because, it's like, right. Is this going to be the thing that finally changes people's minds? I wanted to hear from both of you. I'll just kind of choose who goes first randomly, mostly Robert, and to just say, what was your inspiration for this? Obviously, the movie Game Changers. I saw the link in your in your book title, a game-changing approach. There's definitely like a theme of.
Was there a movie? People keep saying that.
Was there a movie? We didn't see a movie.
Okay. I thought we just made up a good subtitle.
Yeah, I know exactly. And what was your what brought you guys together first of all on it? I know you guys have been friends for a long time, but what was the impetus? Who started the conversation? We've got to get this going on. The sheer amount of elite athletes that you brought in for this thing is insane. I don't even know what the logistical nightmare that must have been to contact everybody and get everybody's quotes and inputs and meal plans and daily what they do every day. I mean, I can't even imagine. So anyways, let me start with you, Robert, and you guys can jump back and forth, but what was the impetus? What was obviously you've written a couple books and what was this next incarnation about?
Yeah, well, I mean, for full transparency, I think it's fun in this conversation to actually tell that story. I wrote a book proposal for The Plant-Based Athlete in 2013, and it almost got published. I was going direct to a publisher as well. It didn't quite make it. I worked with an agent, and that didn't quite work out either. So I kind of put it on the shelf for a while, and I self-published Shred It and Plant-Based Muscle. And that publisher that almost took a chance on this book ended up publishing Matt's book, the No Meat Athlete Cookbook, The Experiment. And so we still got another book, or Matt got a book out there with that publisher. And then in 2018, I was having dinner with Brian Wendell from Forks Over Knives. And he said, hey, you want to give this a shot again? Because he put me in touch with the previous agent. And I said, sure. So he put me in touch with an agent. And I went back to the same concept. I wanted to tell the compelling stories of the world's greatest plant-based athletes. I wanted to make this happen. And so I figured, if I was going to make this happen, I want to join forces with somebody who can help bring it to life. And Matt was honestly the first person that I thought of. And in fact, I was so compelled, I flew across the country to meet with Matt in person and pitched it to him in person, because that's how meaningful it was for me. I wanted to be able to have a sit down conversation and bring this to life. And so Matt said he's in. And so we went to work. And Sid, you're right. The logistical, I mean, you look at the first page, I think, where it lists every athlete's name that we interviewed, 60 or so. That was a tough, a tall task, a tall order, but we made it through and told some really, really exciting and inspiring, motivating stories that are woven throughout the book. And I think that is one of the aspects that's going to really resonate with readers.
So my perspective here, Sid, which kind of goes back to your question of like, is this going to be the one? I was actually, after knowing about the cookbook, I told myself that I was finished writing books. Not because like that went badly. It actually has gone great. That's been a very, just keep selling year after year. I'm really happy with how that has done and how it has helped people. But I just thought that like I didn't have any more to say as far as my message went. Like I had put my thing into my first book, my shtick was all there. Then the recipe follow-up book, and like I didn't, other than like changing topics like you do all the time, I didn't have anything else to like, say, unless it was a personal development book or something different. But so I just kind of figured it was finished, and then Robert approached me. We took a little walk on the boardwalk, and we're in Florida at this event, and he came out there so that we could have this conversation. Apparently. And he asked if I wanted to do it, and I was like, man, like, and so the way he presented it was, we've done our books before, we've said our approach, and so have 10 other people at this point who have written good, popular, successful vegan fitness books,
right?
But they're always one person telling their specific way of doing it and their specific story, and that's why this one's different. That's why I agreed to do this book. That's why when I heard Robert brought this idea to me, why I was like, I'm in, like, this is great. Because the idea was not make it about any one person's approach. It was, let's talk to some of the very top athletes in the world, and a whole lot of them. And let's see what their approach is. And then let's see what we can learn about how all of the best plant-based athletes do this and how they, the diet, the way they make it work for their sport. So when you ask if this is the one, I don't know. I mean, who knows what's going to be the one that really captures everybody's minds. But like, this is different from what there's been before. So I think there's it has as good a shot or a better shot than any yet to me, because it's different. Like this is a growing up sort of this movement for me. It's like, now we're not just, telling N=1 stories, but this time it's an N=60 and way more than that have kind of, in the background of all this. So that's that.
And also, if I can just quickly add to that, and Matt, yes, that was really the primary reason for going out to Balance for Life in Florida. I wanted to meet with you. Like this was a big shot, and I knew that you could bring something huge to the table here, and obviously it worked out. And that was a fun event as well, a health conference out in Florida. But also, what Matt just said, is this the one? Or what you were asking, Sid, is this the one? What we've heard so far from Rich Roll, Rip Esselstyn, Brendan Frazier, people who have read the book, people who are in the book, people who have the book, they love it. Like they can't recommend it highly enough. Like they realize that there's been this maturing effect that's happened in our movement. And many of them were early also. Let's be honest. Brendan Frazier was very early writing books about this topic. Scott Jurek was fairly early. Rich Roll was early. Matt and I were early, right? Fiona Oakes was early. We've all learned from those experiences, and now we're able to reflect on this body of work. And I think most people know. I think they're really, I don't know, I don't want to say like respectful or whatever the word is, but they've understood that Matt and I have cultivated and nurtured large audiences for essentially decades in our work. And they realize that it's kind of appropriate that we bring this book to life, that Matt and I are the authors, and we're able to share their stories and the highlights of their stories and really point people to their direction, because they're the ones that have succeeded and excelled to such a high level. And so, I mean, I get emails all the time, from conducting these interviews, that people are so excited about this book. And I'm talking like Olympic gold medalists who email me like, Robert, I can't wait for my copy. Where is it? And that tells me that this is different than just like, it's Matt's new book. obligatory post. I've got to do a thumbs up now because Matt asked me to.
Is that what you do? Is that what people do?
That's what the whole world goes. Oh, it's Matt's new book. Anyways, yeah. Well, what's interesting is as I was looking through the perusing the 353 pages of the and look, it's fine. And anyways, but it's funny because it in some ways it came like one book I read recently, the Breath. I'm a breathing coach now, so I'm totally into the breathing thing right now. But Breath by James Nestor, which is another one of these books really well written by a journalist that sort of gets into these different areas. And I almost found a similar thread, even though you guys are both athletes yourself and you don't both tell your stories, but there was an aspect of almost a journalistic aspect to this book of you guys interviewing people and really trying to cultivate a huge width and breadth of information into one volume, which I think you did really, really well. But it was interesting to see that perspective of you guys both being in the world that you're writing about, but also in a way stepping outside of it as almost as a journalistic kind of pursuit, which I thought was really interesting. I think that will blend and translate very well into the marketplace, I hope, because I think, well, it looked like it already has. There's a lot of attention around this book, and I think it's rightfully deserved. But I mean, I was half jesting when I said, "Is this the final one?" And the reason is because we've all been doing this a long time, right? And the amount of science out there, the amount of research out there. And I was trying to remember when I made this joke. It was either in one of my videos or my podcast or something. But I said, when people try to convince non-plant-based people that plant-based is doable, it has to be so like elite. We have to go like, listen, there was a guy and he climbed Kilimanjaro on his fingertips and he could do that plant-based and that like it takes that to convince somebody.
Yeah, through photosynthesis. It's energy from the sun.
Well, no, it's not even that. It's like the amount of the feats of strength and excellence that we have to convince. It takes that much to convince somebody that we can't be like, hey, this guy's a father of two and he works full time and his wife, she works full time and they're plant-based and they're doing great. That's not enough. It has to be gold medalists, championship swimmers, and you did all that. But it's like, what is it going to take before people realize, okay, it's not only can you get by, it's preferable on the body. I mean, I'm a nutritionist. It's like the amount of what's interesting to me about the book is I want you both to speak of this also, Robert, because you were a professional weightlifter. The oftentimes people have this kind of ethic or whatever it is about, that person's a triathlete, they can eat whatever they want because they exercise all the time. When in fact, physiologically, the opposite is true. When you're putting that much demand on your body to be healthy, your body needs the nourishment and the support nutritionally to pull off that level of stress. And I mean, maybe weightlifting is one of the most relevant places, but also mixed martial arts. And I know you have some mixed martial art athletes interviewed in your book as well. So speak to that, Robert, as a weightlifter. I mean, I know that as a class of athletes, weightlifters often suffer from things like heart disease because their bodies are responding to the stress of the weight training by building muscle, but sometimes at the expense of their overall health. So Robert, speak to that first. And then Matt, I'd like your perspective too, as an ultra runner. And I know you've dabbled in weight. Last time I think we talked, or last year, you were in like a pretty heavy duty weightlifting program. I don't know if you're still doing that, but I know you were doing that for a while. So Robert, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks, Sid. Well, first, I do want to clarify. I actually am amateur status, not professional in weightlifting. It's one of those complicated things. It's different divisions and different levels of status in that. But just wanted to just clarify for accuracy.
That's fine.
But I appreciate that.
But a competitive athlete.
Yeah. I mean, I've been a champion bodybuilder multiple times. Competed at the Natural Bodybuilding World Championships back in 2006, and had a pretty successful run as a bodybuilder. And so, Sid, you're talking about something.
You're just not good at making money from it.
Yeah, exactly. Keep my amateur status, hoping the Olympics are still an option for me in my 40s. Keeping that door open. You got to keep it ajar. It's actually pretty near and dear to me, this topic, because I've met so many bodybuilders who have unfortunately gone too soon, passed away in their 40s from a very heavy animal protein diet. I mean, very heavy, hundreds and hundreds of grams of animal protein per day, who suffered massive heart attacks, organ failure, arteries just completely clogged up, no more blood flow, and they passed away. in unfortunate ways in their 40s. I can list, many of them. And I met a bunch of them in person, got photos with them. One I even featured in one of my books because he was someone I kind of looked up to, even though he was notorious for kind of teasing vegetarians and for not, getting quality protein and all this stuff. And unfortunately, his career came to an end, as did his life. This is a very common theme in the sports that I actually kind of hang around: bodybuilding, powerlifting, pro wrestling. It sounds kind of like a unique little trifecta there, but that's kind of the community that I've been hanging around. And that is a very, very difficult lifestyle to live if you're not taking precautions to make sure your dietary patterns are suitable for living a healthy and long life. Now, I do want to specify, in some cases there are anabolic drugs and steroids and growth hormone used in these professional bodybuilders and pro wrestlers and such, which may or may not have an impact on their early mortality rates. But clearly, when you look at the cause of early mortality, it's related to heart disease, heart attack, and organ failure, largely from a massive high calorie consumption of animal protein. And so the issue there is that there's this perception that this is really masculine, right? That eating a lot of meat and lifting heavy weights is a very masculine thing to do. I came from a running background initially. I came from a farming background. I came from being a pretty thin long distance runner with aspirations of being a bodybuilder and a champion bodybuilder and a pro wrestler and all these things. And I eventually did put on 100 pounds, and I was able to do it in a practical and healthy way, to go from 120 pounds to 220 pounds, which is approximately what I am today. And what I'm really hoping is that people can really resonate, not just with my message, but with other people who are featured in the Plant-Based Athlete, like Nick Squires, who just set 4 California state powerlifting records last weekend, that you can be big and strong and build muscle on a plant-based diet. And that's still the question that people are worried about. People are still worried about protein. People are still worried about the masculinity issue. People are still worried about physical performance, especially in strength sports. But I'm here to say, and so are many others, that you can be an Olympic weightlifter. You can make it to the Olympic Games. You can do all these things, or maybe not you, but people, people have. I'm not saying listeners are going to go, represent their nation and carry the flag at the opening ceremony, but the fact that a plant-based diet has not prevented people from doing that. And that's one of the exciting things about the Plant-Based Athlete, is that it's not just runners like Scott Jurek and Brendan Brazier and Fiona Oakes and Rich Roll, who are all in the book, but there are powerlifters, there are bodybuilders, including professional bodybuilders who have been vegan since birth. And if that doesn't communicate a message about getting adequate protein and doing it in a healthy way, then I don't know what does. And so I'm hoping this is that resource that is shared with everybody, including from the celebrity athletes who are in the book, saying, hey, this is the go-to resource. This is what you need to learn to follow this how-to approach. You just adjust your calorie intake. You just adjust your protein needs based on your gender, age, body type, size, your sport, all that stuff. And you can follow a plant-based meal plan to see you through the finish line in a healthy and sustainable way.
Sid, I think I like your question, actually, because I've been trying to in my head kind of sort out where where this fits, like, this book and basically the idea of like that plant-based athletes can be really good at their sports, and that a plant-based diet can work really well for sports. I think there's at least my sense, until I really kind of read the book in like its final version, I was kind of thinking that we were setting out to create this argument that said that a plant-based diet is the best diet for sports. And it's kind of hard to make that argument because, like Robert just said, you got people using all kinds of different drugs and things like that. But even short of that, like, you can imagine a sport or a weightlifter in a short-term period where, like, drinking, I don't know, whatever they drink, 2 gallons of whole milk per day. And it's hard to keep up with that with a plant-based diet. And especially if, like, you're eating whole foods and a healthy version of a plant-based diet, it would be hard to keep up with that kind of caloric intake, and not much less one that's like hormonally active the way whole milk is. And so, like, certainly we can find spots where you could say, but wouldn't this diet be a little bit better right here than a plant-based diet would? And who knows if the answer is yes or not. But it's a hard argument to make, to say like this is universally better, because we haven't yet seen tons and tons of pro athletes. We're seeing a handful, and there's some at the very top of their games, which is awesome. But the answer to your question though is for me kind of the real answer, that like there's with performance versus longevity, there's this trade-off. In the short term, if you're trying to be an extremely good performer at something, one of the best in the world, or you're just going, even if you're not one of the best in the world, but you're trying to get the very most you can out of your body, your genetics, the things you're going to need to do, the amount of training, the amount of caloric consumption, pretty much for a lot of sports, that's generally not a good thing for your longevity.
Right.
But if you can choose the plant-based diet, where I think this book makes the point that like that is just as good as the other diet. I'm not trying to say it's better, but it is at least as good. It is worthy of consideration among other diets if you're trying to be really good at a sport. The plant-based one's going to be the one that doesn't really have much of a trade-off for your longevity. And not just that, but also probably keeps you going in your sport much longer. So I mentioned the weightlifter who might drink these 2 gallons of whole milk per day and whatever else, compared to the plant-based weightlifter who's just not going to get quite as many calories and going to have some trouble keeping up, at least in terms of calories. But that plant-based weightlifter is going to be able to do it for 5 or 10 more years. I'm not, that's just a hypothetical example, but you see so many athletes who are doing this in the twilight of their careers and just enjoying a resurgence in their careers because they find a plant-based diet. Chris Paul's a great example, but there are many more. And that seems to be one of the benefits. It's not just like this is going to get you to the very not top next level right now, but this is what's going to let you keep doing it at a level very close to your best for many years.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point, Matt, because I think that a lot of times in the recommendations and things like that, there is a difference between, well, if you look at, I mean, let's face it, most professional athletes are not 100% plant-based. I mean, you gathered a lot, but overwhelmingly most are not. So it's not like you can make the case you can't be at the top of your game unless you're on a plant-based diet. So I think you made that point very clear. The question is, can you be at the top of your game and be in a plant-based diet? And the answer is yes also. So if you consider those other things, I remember years ago when I did my first ultra marathon 6 years ago. And I remember I was listening to the Ultra Runner podcast. I've since become friends with that guy, Eric Schranz, a really good guy. He was interviewing a professional ultra runner. And I remember the guy talking about his diet. And he said, I'm eating a lot. I swear to you, it was calf liver and like olive oil. It was one of these things. And I was like, holy crap. Right. But the guy's just freaking burning through races. Right. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, I was like, I want to see that guy in 5 years. Just because I know the difference. It's like, I know what, you heard all these stories, like they eat cheese pizza and they win these races. I know, but if they want to continue. So sure enough, 5 years, guess what? He's 100% plant-based. I freaking knew it. I knew it. I was like, what will that guy be doing in 5 years if he wants to keep running? Right. So it's like the analogy I use with the car. It's like you can put just gas and no motor oil in a car and it'll start up and run and it'll go fast for a very short time. But if you put motor oil in it and keep the engine, running well, then it'll keep going even longer. So it is that difference between short-term, elite level, top of your game stuff, and then, longevity and health and that as well. But I mean, if you look at I've argued on occasion with people like most blue zones in the world, not 100% plant-based, right? So the question is, can you be? And yes, the answer is yes. So now the question is this. And I found, and I always read these books and I go, are they going to go there? And you guys went there and it's fine. But I always wonder if there's going to be I'll tell you what I'm talking about in a second, backlash of like, oh, that was the thing. And what you mentioned was the environmental impact of this diet. Okay. That there's bigger picture than just the nutrition. So this is where it gets interesting, because can somebody look at you and go, okay, well, that's all great, but what you're really trying to do is get your agenda across. And this is because if you go nutrition to nutrition, somebody on a paleo diet, if they're doing a pretty healthy version, which is not very much animal protein and mostly whole plants, can kill a certain sport probably as easy as somebody on a 100% plant-based diet. But there are bigger pictures at hand. So speak to that and why. What was your decision to include that into the book?
Yeah, I think that's just that's an overwhelmingly important thing to bring into the conversation. So we're talking about all these plant-based athletes, and when we interviewed them, you may have seen also, depending on the time that you had to peruse the book, there's this, finding your why. Why did you do this in the first place? Because we deliberately did not talk about that at first. It was not in the first draft. It was not in the second draft, I don't believe. we didn't want to talk about why people got into a plant-based diet. We wanted to talk about the results, like how their life changed, like how their inflammation went away, how their energy went up, how their performance improved, like how their world around them completely was transformed. But then we decided to, let's just, ask a handful of athletes why they did this. And most of their responses actually, surprisingly, did come from an ethical perspective. And I question whether we should have that in there or not as well, in case there's this underlying agenda people suspect or something like that. But these were also just the true stories of, at least of those who presented their information. And really, Matt and I both follow in that category as well. We're under that umbrella of, we made this. It was for ethical reasons that we decided to eliminate all animal protein and all animal byproducts from our diets, and performance was, a kind of a benefit of that, so to speak. So we just felt like it was important. It is important to bring up some of those things, just like it was important to address, the soy and estrogen issue. This big fear of especially men consuming soy. Like, we just needed to, these elephants in the room just couldn't roam around anymore. We needed to bring that up, because at the end of the day, it's your personal nutrition, your personal sport is really kind of a selfish thing. I mean, really, really self-centered. Like, I'm going to follow this diet that, eats the livers of these animals or their organs, or I'm going to eat this raw meat or whatever, because this is going to make me feel good about myself and be big and strong. And I'm going to be ripped and post on Twitter and Instagram, look at me, at the expense of another, animal's life. And I just think it's important that we at least have that conversation. Even though many, many, many people we interviewed for the book came to a plant-based diet because they had inflammation and they wanted to improve performance. There are certainly a number of them who also care about the world around them and the environmental implications and the animals that are impacted by this. And I felt, much like Forks Over Knives, who put just a few minutes in there. They included Gene Bauer and they included a little bit of that environmental thing. Yeah. It's a key part of the puzzle. And I don't think it's enough in a book with 100,000 words to deter people, with a few paragraphs about that.
Yeah.
For me, Sid, like that has been an issue before. I don't ever write No Meat Athlete content about animals or about environment. Occasionally we'll have someone on the podcast who's motivated mostly by one of those things. Although I should say I was motivated by that, like Robert said, like that's, sure. I did it for animals in the beginning. But I guess for me, like, so anyway, I've had the publishers my first publisher wanted me to put a section like that in the book. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. It doesn't fit. And I think it kind of undermines the cause a little bit, and undermines the case we're trying to make. Like you said, I think that if this were like a book where if the target audience of this book was the elite athlete who is really trying to get to the very top of their sport, their sport, I think that would not belong in there. It shouldn't be in the environmental stuff. Because of exactly what you said. It just makes it suddenly seem like there might be something else going on here. But to me, like, I don't know, the person this is for isn't that person. It's just because there aren't that many of those people. We want this book to make an impact and get a whole lot of people to eat this diet. Not just for their health, not just for the environment, not just for the animals, all these things. It has all of these great things going for it. And to me, I think we do more good by someone reading this book and being excited about it and seeing that part, and that being the part that makes them say, yes, this is right. Kind of going back to the last question, like, I'm not trying to say the plant-based diet is the only great choice for short-term sports performance. There are obviously lots of them, but we've got all these other things that it does. It has this sustainability feature, not just for our careers and our lifespan, our health span, but also for the bigger picture, the environment and animals. So to me, like, that part of the argument is an important one when we're trying to get a lot of people to do this. So that's why it's here. But I totally get what you're saying, and I think that's a really important question.
Well, I come from obviously a philosophy background. My whole filter is always through ethics, and I think that health in general, happiness in general, it should incorporate all the aspects of what it is to be a successful human being. And so it really wasn't a critique. It was more like I saw that in there and I thought, I wonder if that will be, it may not be, it may be like totally fine. And I like what Robert was saying about, as you interviewed actual people and they're talking about it, then obviously it's a real consideration for people. And by the way, when you feel happier and less stressed about what you eat, that can only add to further sports performance. When you're feeling in general good, good on a physical level in multiple places. I did see a through line. I mean, it's so everywhere in your book of better recovery, better recovery, better recovery, better recovery. I mean, it's like boom, 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 boom. I mean, it's like real, and with every athlete. For the my listeners are squarely in the completely not elite athlete realm. That's just my work. What do you say to them, to people who are everyday folks doing their business, weekend warriors, running a few miles a day, biking, whatever else? How does this book, and Robert alluded to it earlier, but in terms of like adjusting your calories, adjusting your protein, et cetera, I really like the fact that you like really put carbohydrates in there, because it, obviously drives me nuts when people are like carbs are bad. I'm like, no, they're actually the best. But anyways, but what do you say to the everyday man and woman who just is kind of doing their deal? How does this book apply? How can they use it practically to recalibrate for them day to day? Matt, why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah, sure. So
because you're more regular.
Yeah, well, plant-based diet helps me do my business. That's
no, I don't mean, geez, Matt.
It's
all the fiber.
I was just saying,
it's the warrior drink he's got. He actually needs to. Can we pause? He's got to run to the restroom real quick.
Yeah, and what nobody saw is that I didn't hit record fast enough. Matt got up and put in a huge plant in the background. Is that a fern or something? I mean, just literally like placed.
It's actually not even real. It's a plastic.
Is it really?
Plant. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
We're in this apartment in Charlotte, and there's not enough light to like support real plants. So
gotcha.
It's the closest thing I can do.
So good. Anyway, so go ahead to start with it.
Anyway, this again kind of goes back to what we said earlier, like that if you're eating a plant-based version of an athlete diet, certainly the elite athlete is going to be doing some things that are not the perfect choice for just the weekend warrior, at-home person. But mostly that's probably to do with like sports supplements they might be taking, and then also just the number of calories. But it's really not that different. Like that's why it's so good why it extends careers and why it does so. It lets people perform at a very high level, I suspect, without damaging seriously their chances of living a long time. And in fact, compared to other diets, really helps that. And we're seeing that in the science. That's not even really debatable now. So I think it's kind of unique among sports diets in that like it's also really good even if you're not that active. Like even if you weren't active at all, I would still say you should be eating pretty much the same diet a lot of these elite athletes are eating, just less of it, just fewer calories. Right. You don't need to eat significantly less protein. Maybe certain athletes have, and you'll see in the book, or you've seen, like the day in the life section that has the 25 different athletes. People eat really different. There are some common themes, but there are lots and lots of ways to make this thing work. So some of them are eating a whole lot of protein or trying to get a lot of protein for their particular sport or their philosophy. But you see that there are plenty who don't. And to me, this book allows you to eat like an athlete, and perform like one in whatever it is that you do. That's one of the just amazingly great, unique things about a plant-based diet, is that the same things that work for short-term recovery from muscle damage and inflammation to get you ready to perform the next day. It's almost the same mechanism that is helping with disease prevention in the long term. So it's such kind of a holistic diet that just kind of applies to everyone. And to me, that's I think the typical average person who eats a pretty healthy plant-based diet, I think reading a book like this, they would not only find inspiration in what the other athletes are doing, and just the idea that they're eating like an athlete, much like I drink juice like a warrior. I think the actual nutritional tips as well. I think you can clean up your diet. I think you can, people do still worry about protein. And I think you read this, I think it'll give you a lot of confidence to know that you're kind of doing the same things as these elite athletes who are certainly getting enough protein are doing. So that's kind of my take. I don't know, Robert, what do you think about?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And what I would say for the weekend warrior, the non-athlete, what's in it for me? I would say this book is for you, because these elite athlete stories in the book are so aspirational. They're so inspirational as well. They inspire you to want to be more active and go, take a few more steps or go run a little bit further or make that conscious effort to have a little bit of a healthier lunch or dinner. It's not that we all are going to be like these athletes. It's that their stories are so motivational and so encouraging and uplifting that you can't help but say, man, this is a really good read. I just feel good reading about these people who overcame addiction, overcame body image issues, overcame obesity, overcame injuries, overcame career-ending situations, overcoming internal struggle, these types of things. And I think as readers, just as everyday people, we can relate to some of those issues that these athletes have gone through. And what they've been able to do is persevere and overcome that and achieve in their sport, even when they dealt with depression and mental illness or obesity or drug addiction. And they went on to become great athletes. And I think, like you said, Matt, and as Dr. Greger says, who wrote the foreword for our book, which we're honored to have him on board, is that a plant-based diet should be the default diet until proven otherwise, because of its ability to impact all cause of mortality and just lead to longevity. And Sid, to your point, you're right. You can live a great Blue Zones diet with a little bit of fish here and a little bit of, whatever other animal protein here and there. But the plant-based diet, either exclusively plant-based or very, very, very heavy plant-based diet, has just proven to be effective as far as maintaining a healthy body weight, maintaining healthy levels of dietary cholesterol, maintaining open and effective flowing arteries, maintaining overall health biomarkers that are desirable. It has the ability in some cases to possibly prevent and even reverse certain diseases they're common degenerative diseases. And Sid, the theme, as you hit the nail on the head, is this idea with inflammation. The inflammation is the Achilles heel of the American diet, and not just the American diet, but the American active person who is, whether you consider yourself an athlete or not, and who knows whether even any of the three of us consider ourselves like athletes in this exact moment that we're having this conversation. But the active person who's taken their dog for a walk or plays intramural sports or just is a busy stay-at-home parent deals with inflammation and soreness and fatigue. And a plant-based diet can help alleviate a lot of that. And the cases could not be more clear in the book. And that is what I really love. From conducting these interviews, it's not just, well, I'm vegan because, I'm doing it for the animals and we'll see how my athletic career works out. That's not the case. The case is that I had inflammation. I'm already an athlete. I wanted to get more mileage out of my diet. I came to a plant-based diet and I was able to have the pain go away, and I was able to improve and prolong my career. That's the thing. Matt and I are doing interviews all the time, and it's inflammation and longevity. I mean, that's it. I mean, why are these people like Rip Esselstyn setting world records at age 59? Being the best in the world in his age group in the 200-meter backstroke. Why is John Joseph at almost age 60 doing Ironman triathlons, full-length Ironman triathlons? Why is Fiona Oakes and Christine Vardaros still competitive in their 50s in their respective sports? And the famous quote from Rich Roll about how he reached his athletic peak well into his mid 40s. There's something here that has to do with inflammation and longevity that benefits those who eat plants. And that is really the key message that any weekend warrior, any casual recreational athlete, or even non-athlete can benefit from.
Yeah, super cool. Well, I think that's that about sums it up. I think you guys did an incredible job. I think you should pat yourselves on the back. It's a massive. I can't wait to get the physical book. I haven't gotten it yet, but I'm assuming it's.
You haven't?
No, but I got the.
Here's some.
There it is.
100 of them in my apartment.
Oh,
they must be like in media mail or something. I don't know why they're taking so long, because they've been sent out to people, including you.
Yeah. When Matt emailed me and he's like, "Has the publisher been in touch?" I was like, "No." He goes, "Do you have the book?" I was like, "No, I don't have the book." Anyways,
we had that.
This is mine. Funny story. Funny story about this book. My mom ordered this from Amazon. She got it like the week it came out, and I was Zooming with my parents over the weekend, and she goes, "Oh, I have your book right here," and the cover was misprinted, and she didn't even know my name. It was cut off here, and I go, "Mom, my name isn't even on the cover. Did you not like? It's not even on the." She's like, "Oh, is that not? That's not correct. Just huge white block here." I go, "That was complete." She didn't even notice. She goes,
Was it
"I love
that copy, or was it all of the copies?
No, but luckily it was just a few. So the
Okay.
publisher's on it because he's getting some like books sent back and refunded and everything. I was like, oh my gosh. She goes, yeah, look at your book. I was like, that's not at all correct. Tell me that's not the book you got in the mail. Anyways, it's nice to hold the physical book is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. You did an incredible job. And yeah, I like to say I hope it does well, but it's already doing well. So I think you guys are going to kill it, and rightfully so. So keep up the good work, and I'll keep talking about it. I know I talked about it yesterday at the Stanford Inn, and Jeff bought a whole case as I was sitting next to him. And so
awesome.
it'll be for sale at the Stanford Inn's book shop, and so you guys are on your way. And I hope we all.
That's actually where we're directing all these podcasts. When they ask where to buy it, I said go to the Stanford Inn.
The Stanford Inn gift shop. It's
try to go through them somehow.
It's
it's the gateway to make the bestseller list.
It's like Amazon,
gatekeeper.
Stanford Inn gift shop. There's like two different portals there. Anyway, so cool.
Sid, can I give we have a little pre-order bonus. I don't know when this episode's going up, but
it's going to go up within the next few days, literally, because I know you guys have it June 15th, so I'm kicking this thing into gear.
Yeah,
so
if you
give it to me.
Go to book.nomeatathlete.com. You'll see like all the links to all the bookstores. Actually, don't have the Stanford Inn bookstore there, but I should. But there's also some details about how you can get all these bonuses that Robert and I put together, like a special Q&A session just for people who do this, some meal plans, an extra chapter about building muscle. So a bunch of goodies if you follow the instructions there, forward your receipt on to us and all that. But you got to do that before June 19th to cash in on that. So check it out, book.nomeatathlete.com.
Book, and I'll link to it in the show notes. It's so funny because that's almost exactly like I did for this launch, except for I did 0 of those things. Anyways, except for have the cover misprinted. Anyways, you guys are awesome, and so I'll link to that. But book.nomeatathlete.com. Yes. Okay.
You got it. Yep.
And I'll read your guys' bios and people know how to reach you, and I'll put that stuff. So, anyways, cool. All right, you guys. Hey, listen.
Well, thank you, Sid.
Keep putting out the good word, and hopefully we'll cross paths in physical forms very soon. Yes.
That would be nice.
Another arm wrestling match. You're on. Bring it.
Another. I think it was Scottsdale. All right. Whoa, holy crap! On that note, all right. I mean,
yeah, but I can do that too when we have the camera. I mean,
so can I. It just doesn't look good. Anyway,
Matt's learning the angles now. You're learning the camera angles. Good job.
All right. Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you, Sid.
Appreciate it.